Do not listen to the e-commerce doomers. On this episode of the show, I'm talking to Rabah, Rahil, CMO at Fermat Commerce, and we had a conversation about what is the state of the e-commerce industry and why I believe right now e-commerce brands are better equipped than they ever have been in my entire time in 10 years in e-commerce. Rabah's got over 10 years in e-commerce. I've got over 10 years. We reflect on the industry and talk about why the software, services, and knowledge ecosystem is so much better set up than it was when we were coming up in the game. You should listen, you should watch, and you should pay attention to this conversation. I am obligated to tell you that this is technically a sponsored episode with Fermat, but we basically didn't talk about Fermat at all. It's just a couple guys who are deep in the weeds of high 7 and 8-figure businesses talking about what the state of e-commerce is like for those brands and how you can get in on the action. How you doing? You doing good?
I'm actually doing really good, man. I was on the road a lot. And I discounted how expensive travel was for me, where it was just like sleep, stress. And because the other thing is when I'm traveling, dude, I'm not just like, I do a horrible job of clearing my schedule. And so I still have to run my org. I still have to run the marketing department, but I'm also traveling. And then I'm very, I'm like an extroverted introvert. Like I love shaking hands, kissing babies, and like I hate small talk. So like I'm very engaged when I'm there, and it just burns me out, man. And I've been home for like 10, 12 days now, and I only have to go out.
How long did you travel for?
Dude, for like 6 months, I was 2 or 3 weeks. Like in March, I was home for like 3 days. Like I'm like proper travel, dude. So
do you have a family?
No, or no immediate. Like I don't have a partner or anything like that. And then I have my dad's out in Charlotte, but no like kids or anything like that.
Yeah. The travel thing is exhausting. It's exhausting, and I think like like you just when you're outside your normal routine, it is really tiring. I remember being younger and like being like thinking it was really cool when people got to travel a lot for work, and there's times when it's great, like it's a nice perk, but man, there's really a limit to it really fast.
It's so well said. I say travel is sexy until it isn't. And then you end up being like this, like, that's why you always hear these movie stars or rock stars where it's like, dude, you're just a different hotel, different airport. It's hard to connect. You lose touch with your friends at home. Your social life suffers, your health suffers, but no, too long didn't read, man. Doing great. Company is screaming right now, which is awesome because, November, December are usually dead months for B2B SaaS. So
I would figure.
All the deer goes away. There, supplements is you can still quasi go after supplements because the money months for them are more January. To April. Yeah, and then enterprise where they want to stuff expenses on this year's kind of P&L and then internalize it in the following year. But other than that, people are
interested.
Worse.
People are interested and they're coming to you, excited about it, want to know more.
Yeah,
like
it's interesting.
You say it's screaming, it's going well.
How are you doing though? That's a better question. How are you doing? You sound great.
I'm actually interested to hear what you're saying. I mean, like, are people when people come to you, when people come to Fermat, they've seen landing page stuff before. What are they looking for? And I think it's an interesting conversation piece for like how operators are thinking about how to generate growth in their business, because they're coming to you to solve that problem. And you guys sit in a different place than others. So like when they come to you, what are the things that you consistently hear them talking about? What are the friction points and frustrations that they're looking to use, even if they don't sign with you? Like what are you hearing from them?
100%. So we play a little bit up market right now. And so the biggest thing that we solve, so we are essentially an experimentation infrastructure. So instead of doing all this landers, custom cards, custom PDPs, just give us money and rent it from us. And the most successful people that our brands are kind of like the brands that you're running, they have a very strong view of whether it's jobs to be done, personas, value props, however they segment their market, they have a very strong view on that. And so a lot of our brands that are really doing well have that strong view, but they also have, 10, 20 million in revenue a year kind of thing. And you start to tap out your core audience, kind of what we were just talking about offline, where TAM expansion has been a huge success for us. And so I can give you kind of some more tangible examples where there was a company that made basically like sun protection. And it was mostly for gardeners. And so their whole persona, their whole brand is built around gardeners. And then they started launching Fermat funnels, and they found that, oh my gosh, anglers, so fishermen actually want to buy this. Construction workers want to buy this. But you also don't want to put people off that are coming to the main site that you've built because they've built it around gardeners. And so what Fermat allows you to do is basically have your cake and eat it too, essentially. Like if you think of your main website needs to be average because you want it to appeal to everybody. It's the joke I say is like the main website is who you take home to your parents, and then Fermat is who you take to Coachella, where you can just be whoever you want to be, and you can make all these different angles, and you can talk to people in a way that's meaningful. And then when you start attaching ads on top of that, and so it starts to get really interesting. And
when people come to you, do they know that that's their problem and that's what you guys solve? Like, how much do you think people have internalized the idea that in order for them to reach wider, they actually need to start by going narrower and deeper, which is basically what you're describing, right? I just put out an episode about this. This is like where I'm putting all of the chips of AJF growth right now for my clients. And I really mean that because like we're percentage of spend, in our thing. So we're investing our creative resources and time on the hypothesis that basically like the key thing for us is to speak more deeply to a narrower segment for our clients, and then to replicate that on multiple segments of people. So I won't belabor this because I like if somebody wants to hear me talk about that more, I just did an episode about this, but I think that I don't know. I've been in digital ads in some way or another for 10 years. And while at various points I've articulated something like that, I think in some new way, and maybe it's because I'm in exactly the revenue range for most of my clients that you're describing, like 10 to 20, somewhere in that range. And it's like, we hit broadly on a lot of stuff. And now it's like, how do we go bigger and deeper? Yes. Well, like the story I hear over and over from people who are successfully growing their spend with focus, starting on Meta, but of course it can get beyond that, is like they are going like, okay, I am getting more and more concepts in my ad account, speaking to more and more people, and I'm doing that deeper with a larger number of groups as opposed to trying to hit everybody at once. So my question is, if that's basically true, and it sounds like you basically agree with that, how much do you think like the operators and the CMOs and whoever else is coming to you have really internalized that idea? I'll say one more thing about this really fast, which is people have this idea in their mind that like for creative to be good, they'll say things like, it's got to resonate. You have to engage with people. It has to resonate deeply with people. And you have to know your customer. And these are all ways, actually, when you like sort of draw out the implications of those kinds of statements, they are that same idea, which is like to engage deeply. There's something that exists at the level of human desire that is different for different subsets of people, even though they may both want your product. So that people have some idea of this, but like how much do you think that they like really deeply have internalized, no, this is the way forward for my brand, is to be able to build a brand and build messaging that reaches these different people in these different ways?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Because I'm old, you're also
40.
very seasoned as well. There was a few things going on back in the day, man. Like when I got started, Facebook ads were so underpriced and the targeting was so good that you put $1 in and $6 comes out. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Where now I think the world has moved to Facebook ads are properly priced, but the targeting is worse. So net, the Facebook ads are probably a little bit more expensive. And so my whole thing is now you don't have that huge arbitrage that you used to. And so that's why I think you're seeing a lot of drop shippers go away, a lot of these things. And again, I'm a big capitalist. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to build a true sustaining brand, what you need to get down to is I'm a big fan of jobs to be done. People don't buy products. They hire them to do a job, and multiple people might hire that same product to do a different job. And so understanding your customer, like you said, almost at the primitive, like the root level, the first principle, why are they coming here? I think is super important. People like personas, people like value props. It doesn't really matter what your view is on that, but I think that is really important. And the people that were in the old world that have not converted to the new world, I think are struggling. But the people that either started in the new world where they're like, hey, I don't have easy money, I have to be a great marketer and understand my customer, are doing very well. And so to your point, I think it's a mix of people that have that. I think the other challenge is there's some people that have great products with bad businesses. And so what I mean by that is
100%.
there's a certain profile that you need for paid media to work. And so when I like I said, I've been in the game forever. I used to run, I had my own agency. I worked at an agency, and there was a men's care company, like beard stuff, that I used to run ads for. And they had maybe like 30 SKUs, 25 SKUs. We only ran 2 SKUs for paid ads because those were the SKUs that actually had the economic profile to succeed in paid. And so I think there's some challenges when people have a business problem, not a product problem, because like, hey, yeah, we're selling all this stuff, but it's really not about what you make. It's about what you take home. And so I think that is its own challenge. But the educational thing, I think, again, like people like you, your podcast, there's some really blue flame thinkers that the information's out there, but feature or bug, however you look at it with capitalism, like there's winners and losers. And so you can be right or you can make money. And so I like to do the latter.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just no way around it, where you just need to figure out ways to understand your customer. And again, this is we're talking about more mature businesses. I think, again, you can have a hero product and do really well with one angle, one audience, go broad, get that really strong PMF, get to that $10-20 million a year run rate. But at that point, then you need to understand, like, am I an AOV business? Like, if I'm buying indestructible wallets, or like a big fan of Modern Fuel, like I have a Modern Fuel pen here, but it's a really hard business because how am I going to get more money from people? Like I spent $250 with them, but I have no reason to spend any more money with you. And now that changes your economic profile, because it's like, okay, cool. And the other thing is, like, I mean, I'm kind of mansplaining to you, but the way ads work are, you're going to get the best customers for the cheapest. And then as you start to spend more and more and you acquire more people, you're going to get worse customers for more money. They're going to cost you more money and they're going to spend less with you. And so there's no way to really go around that unless you start putting, like, again, these satellite stores are exactly what you're talking about, where you can talk to people in a way that's meaningful to them, impactful to them, and take them on this journey and kind of meet them where you are. And it's really hard to do that with just a website. Because again, your website, you want your website to appeal to everybody.
Yeah. I actually think I'm not as concerned about customers getting worse over time. I just think they just get more expensive to acquire once you reach the threshold of how much you're willing to pay for a customer. And it's funny.
Let me push back on that, because I'm with you, but you're going to get your evangelists first.
Yeah.
By definition, they're going to be your best customers.
Maybe.
Well, I think because they're going to be searching for it. They're going to want it. They're going to, like, I think of people and going through, I mean, this is a bit more of a B2B kind of framework, but you're problem aware, solution aware, product aware. Yeah. And those people that are super excited about sun protection, they're going to find the best sun protection out there. But then you start to get into this like radial where it's like, hey man, like, I have to convince this person, versus these people at the beginning were pretty much convinced. Like, these are your direct traffic. This is your organic. These are your retargeting. Yeah. Like, you have these people, and then
that's the distinction I would make, though, is that those people typically are not finding you on meta ads. So the thing I'm less worried about is that my meta ads customers today are worse than my meta ads customers were on day one. If they came via organic differently, it's possible. Although one of the things that astounds me in LTV based businesses is how much the cohorts end up being better for longer than people think. Like I do this. Yes. I mean, I build a cohort forecast for every client I work with, and consistently any brands that are, reusable kind of products or whatever, they all worry that, like, today's customers cannot project the same cohort behaviors as yesterday's customers. Yeah. And it's almost never true. Like the exception to that I've seen is like clients where the initial customers came via it's like almost like influencer founder brands, like where it's like the first people who came are the true fans, the biggest fans of the influencer. And so they have a deeper loyalty to the brand basically on day one than anybody else. Once you get past that group, though, I'm not so sure about that. I just think it gets more expensive because at some point you sort of tap out on the, if you're running your ad spend, you basically spend it to your marginal efficiency. And once you do that, now, by definition, that means the next customer is more expensive than the last one. And that's the real challenge, I think. The other thing I may push back on is I actually think Meta's targeting is better now than it ever was before. except that the difference is, and here's the dynamic I think is really partly playing into this, is that a lot of us are pushing it a lot harder and spending a lot more than we used to. And it's because our businesses are bigger. And that's because there's a larger share of US e-commerce or US retail happens online than there used to be. Yep. Businesses have been around for a long time now. I mean, it's just think about it like this, like D2C started 15 years ago or something like that, and so the first couple of years, you got like the VC backed guys in the first wave of D2C or whatever,
which
who are all basically
D2C's horrible VC target. You're seeing it just
terrible
across the board.
That world is gone.
Target.
That world is gone, right? There's still some people who came up, raised money in some way, some of the results of that are still shaking out, but there are not new companies that are happening that way, at least with the pure play D2C model. And anyway, besides that kind of group of like very large companies, the earlier stage of these companies, the bootstrap guys who are more like the companies you see today, they just had to grow slower. They just couldn't grow that fast. So in some of those early days, you saw some crazy stories, but there just weren't that many 8-figure e-commerce businesses. But when I talk to, let's say I talk to Andrew Udarian now, who runs E-commerce Fuel, right? I mean, if you think about it, like his early days, by the way, the best guy ever.
Wonderful human.
Love you, Darren.
Wonderful human.
Everybody should go sign up for E-commerce Fuel. It's great.
Dude, he's the best.
At ECF, he used to frame it. I remember this. His was like the first e-commerce podcast I ever listened to because it was really good, really actionable early on. And I remember his thing was E-commerce Fuel is a community for 6- and 7-figure e-commerce entrepreneurs, e-commerce store founders, right? And now it's for 7- and 8-figure founders, right? That's what the store is. That's what it's for. And now they have like a separate version of ECF Live that's just the 8-figure stores, and there's like plenty of people to go to that, right? And there just weren't that many of those. There just weren't that many of those stores in the early days. Like they just didn't exist, and that's because people have all gotten better, and the D2C world has grown and got. I mean. It just has evolved with time. People solve problems, and people like Fermat come in. And I'm not trying to do this just because like you guys, this is your episode or whatever. But like, think about how much better Fermat is than the kind of software that exists to solve the problems that Fermat is solving today than what existed when you earlier in your existence, right? And you guys are not the only example of this, right? They're just
completely agree.
This software third-party infrastructure of businesses supporting businesses in the space. I came from Common Thread Collective. I can just tell you for a fact, their service is like 1,000 times better than when I was there. It is so good, right? Like my friends at Kinship, their service is way better than when they started. And it's because all of us have had time and reps to solve these problems. So these two things have happened at the same time, which is even as meta gets better or whatever, in my view, but the ecosystem matures, and the problems you have to solve at $30 million and at $80 million are just so different than the problems you had to solve to get to 10, right?
Completely agree.
And so that creates better, more sophisticated conversations in the space. People start seeing that. They see economic opportunities. People like you guys come in and try to solve the problem for somebody. And now we're talking about entering into a world of e-commerce precisely because of the success we've had so far, where it's like the next wave, the next thing to push down is to say, okay, we're going to stop screwing around with a decent solution to this problem. And instead, somebody like Fermat's going to come in and build a solution that is incredibly good software mixed with a full agency service. Like it's just like when I remember when I first got my head around what you guys were doing, it's like, oh, this is like night and day compared to the third-party landing page builder I was using before with some add to cart upsell app mixed in. You know what I mean? It just is a better solution. And again, I'm not trying to say that just because this is your episode. I really mean like anybody who plays around with the tool will realize, oh, this is a different deal. And so that I think is the really interesting dynamic, is that brands are trying to solve a different set of problems today than they were before, just by definition, just by nature of maturity, just by nature of the maturity of the space. And as that keeps happening, it's just going to be interesting to watch. Like, okay, well, what are the next set of problems that brands have to solve, and what are the and how do you guys
100%.
plan, and how does your service evolve, and all that. So anyway, I just said a lot, but respond to that however you want.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. The only pushback I would say is I still will die on the hill that I think Facebook ads are quote unquote more expensive now than they were, because
they're definitely more expensive. The CPM is higher for sure.
Well, I mean, expense in the sense of like they're accurately priced, but we can argue about the targeting. But I guess my counterpoint to what you were saying is I don't think you could build a brand on just paid now. Where in 5 to 7 years ago, there was monster brands getting built just on the back of paid.
What do you mean by build a brand? How would you
like
define
MVMT, Dollar Shave Club, like these things were built only basically on paid media. Yeah. And so I don't think that's possible now anymore.
I mean, I don't know about movement, but like, I mean, Dollar Shave was not doing well profitable at the time. Either, right?
No, were they doing well? Fucking bar. MVMT was doing well. I mean, again, top line well. I don't know what when you get into operational and then net. I don't know what that is, but
because arguably you never could, right? Like arguably,
so that's a fair. Okay, I'll give you that. I will capitulate there. But they could make a money printer go burr, and then I think that's where you saw a lot of VC money coming in. But the problem with VC money in D2C is like, what do you do with the money? You're just going to buy more shitty ads. You're going to have inventory that you're going to have to fire sell. Like you can't. That's why B2B or like SaaS is such a better VC target. Because hey, Andrew, I'm going to give you a bunch of money for your SaaS company. You can go fucking buy a bunch of really incredible engineers and just go. You know what I mean? You can. And so D2C, I think, is just by nature of the business, you want to grow linearly. Because for me, the biggest advantage of D2C is you can print money with super, super low OpEx.
Yes.
And once you change that, you start to put a Husky in Texas, where it's like all your natural advantages are now muted because you have this really bloated org, when it's like, dude, I have friends that are doing $30 million selling jeans and it's a 5-person company. Yeah. It's like, dude, these distributions are crazy. You know what I mean? It's like, this is real money and it's a tiny, so I think that's where things started to get conflated because VC money came in. But I take your point. I don't know if the businesses were actually solvent. I absolutely know that Dollar Shave Club wasn't, because it just got absolutely not bailed out, but just I believe Gillette bought them or something, and they paid a boatload of money. So it was a great exit for the company. But
well, that's the point, right? Is that the money was made on the enterprise value, not on cash flow, right? They were losing money, but they made their money via an exit. Which again, I'm like you, total capitalist. Like
exactly, what's the goal?
Yeah, because I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying that I'm not sure that like if you compare today to then, I'm not sure that it was actually different at the level of ads. What was different was the level was where you made the money. Because if you had to build a business then the way you build a business now, they would not have built those businesses, is my point. I'm just not sure.
I think it's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'm backstepping a little bit. I think your pushback is fair. I think I need to reevaluate that. But I think we might be saying the same thing different ways, because I'm tracking what you're saying now. But I do think now the environment is better suited for more sustainable businesses, which I think is better for capitalism. Where we were talking offline, people had products, not businesses.
And there's two different layers. There were then, it seems to me, two different layers of businesses, which was pretty small ones and pretty huge ones, and not much in the middle. Yes. And the huge ones were like the venture backed, like, you know, all the ones you always talk about, right?
The
Warby and Movement and
Warby,
whatever, right? Yeah. And most of those were awesome founder stories that did terrible for the acquirer or for the people who bought them on the public markets, right?
Yes.
That's like most of those stories. And again, like, you know, it's really easy to say that in retrospect. Like people expected the economy of scale to work in e-commerce really differently than it actually does. And it doesn't, it turns out, work like software, right? So like, but now what I think has really opened up is space for like the mid to pretty large size business that grows consistently for a long time. And, you know, take when you hear like Sean Frank talk about the goals for Ridge, right? The idea of building $1 billion business or whatever. I don't think his expectation is that he's going to build that tomorrow. You know, it's not like we're just going to like venture scale to the moon or whatever. It's like, we're going to be profitable from day one, and we're going to build $1 billion company that way, you know. And I'm not sure if that's exactly true, but like basically it's a really different pathway to doing it. And either way, what that comes back to is, okay, if now the problem I have to solve is not just pouring money into ads, I actually have to profitably sell people my product and get them.
Yes.
That means I have to resonate more deeply emotionally with a customer than before, when I just solved that problem with money, you know, like, and now it's like, I actually have to do something that makes somebody love my brand. Yes. And at the same time, there are way more interesting tools to do that today, especially for that mid tier, when you really get, you know, to that stage we're talking about, than there was at the time. Yeah.
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 Total addressable market for everybody following along. I hate when people use acronyms and don't explain them. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that, no notes. I think that it is a really awesome time. This is a really interesting time because it is, I say it's the best time to be exceptional and the worst time to be average. Where before you could be, you clock in, you clock out, you do your thing, you have a partner, you have a house, you have a kid, you have a white picket fence, everything's fine, 401k, whatever. Now you're just seeing a barbell of like the average people are kind of sliding down to the non-talented, and the exceptional people are just taking even more value from the market. And so, but with that, there's opportunity, right? And I love opportunity and democratization where like, I think the only reason you should go to university, one, if you can afford it, it's a fantastic experience. If you don't have to borrow money, go for it, fucking send it. Two, if there's a professor you really, really want to study under, go there. Or three, if there's a legitimate like school that has like Ivy League still pay off. You know what I mean? If there or a Stanford or something where there's just this prestigious school but dude, I went to Indiana University. It's a great school, but I mean, it's a state school. I got an economics degree and I'm doing marketing now. And so I think that you can really learn pretty much everything you want to from your podcast, from YouTube, from C2C does great content, like Udarian, like there's so much knowledge out there now. And as two kind of old fogies, like the advice to the young guns out there is, man, learn in your 20s, earn in your 30s. Like I took so many disadvantaged economic decisions because I wanted to figure out ways to understand how I could generate value. And then finally, it's almost like in a weird way, like targeting, right? Like you want to start broad and then kind of circling back to this point, then how can I become T-shaped where I know what's going on, but then I can go really deep and narrow, because I think skills are acquired by a kind of flywheel of like, I like it and I'm interested in it, so I do it, I get better at it, so I get positive reinforcement that, oh, Andrew, you're so good at this, then I want to do it more. And that's how you acquire skills. So dude, if you're not good at spreadsheets, don't do spreadsheets. If you're a creative, go be creative. If you're a data person, go be data person. That's not to say like there's things that are really necessary that you just need to make sure that they're not existential risks to the system. But outside of that, just do. I think one of the worst pieces of advice is make your weaknesses into strengths. I think that's horrible. I think you should make your strengths into insurmountable super strengths. Exactly. Very well said. And I think that is something that is really evident where all the people I know that are super successful are very T-shaped, where they have broad interests, but man, they can go deep on one or two things and do it really well. And for better or worse, man, speciality is where the money is, where people want killers, they want experts, they don't want generalists.
So this is actually my one of my theories about the space in relation to sort of like the evolving landscape of e-commerce is that another thing that we have now that is so different, like Rabah, think back to the kinds of conversations that we were having publicly in terms of the level of sophistication in those days compared to now. It is night and day how much more knowledge there is today than there was then. So there's these two things that I think are both major factors in why brands can reach that like you're hearing about more and more 9-figure businesses now, whereas and I think that's going to go the same way that the 8-figure thing did. You didn't hear about that many 8-figure businesses. Some were getting there. That was a really big e-commerce business. I remember being at Kalo when we got to 8 figures or whatever, and it was like, I remember Taylor turning to me at one point and being like, we've got to be one of the bigger Shopify stores, right? And we probably were at the time. That was like 9 years ago, and now it's like, there's so many of those. And not to discount anybody's accomplishments. It's really hard to get there, but there's just so many more of those businesses now that existed. And that next, and now it's gonna be that same thing with 9-figure businesses, where that's gonna be like, okay, there's a lot more 9-figure businesses in e-commerce than there used to be. And they're not even really just D2C anymore. So all that I think is happening at the same time. And my, like I said earlier, I think one of the things that's powering that is the availability of tools made by smart and incentivized people who can make money adding those tools, like I was saying with you guys, and again, there's I think of a bunch of other tools like this, as well as other services. So the tools and services ecosystem and infrastructure in e-commerce, on top of what Shopify is constantly adding to their tool, just first party, is so amazing that really, really helps, because those tools actually do create leverage in your business. And
Yes.
and it's great that the creator of the tool makes money in the process, but like, you're making a return on a tool. I've mentioned this before, like when the client that I've used you guys with, right, started using you, building that in, got the tool going, it was a 50% spend increase really fast. And so it's like that created, because you guys built that tool, that generated leverage in this actual e-commerce business that I was working on. But the other element of that is knowledge. And what you just said is also right, which is like, there is so much free knowledge of people speaking at a really sophisticated layer in the ecosystem now that did not exist when I started.
Correct.
Like when I think of the content that Taylor and I were putting out 8 years ago, it sucked. I mean, it was so basic. And now it's like people are coming in as like they're running Facebook ads, but they're thinking like a CFO, and they're like, they're building their cohort models down to each customer, and that's like becoming table stakes for agencies now to build like financial forecasting off the back of that. That was something that so there's just so much that's so different and so much better. And actually, I sort of wonder if this is one of the places where you guys fit in this, which is that like on the marketing and advertising side, there is this ability to think that way about the actual task of marketing and advertising, because in the, again, previous generation of this, right, what was happening was very sort of tactics oriented in terms of your approach to paid. And that's still really good, right? The tactics are still really helpful. I mean, I talk about them a lot, but what I think may happen here is that there's sort of the same kind of depth that we talk about on the finance side that I think is starting to happen on the supply chain side, though I think that's actually the most under-optimized area for a lot of businesses. But more and more I'm hearing people talk about increasing sophistication there is actually starting to happen in the marketing and advertising side, so that people are instead of just being in a call where somebody's like, man, Nike sure makes cool ads, why don't we do it like that, which was like the level of sophistication before. Just like now it's like, okay, can we think down to the level of what is motivating our customer? How do we speak to them all the way through, from ad all the way through the funnel, whatever. And I'm watching brands build businesses by doing that at scale.
That's exactly right. I think there's a few things going on. One, these solutions existed, but the economics were so prohibitive for so many people that it just didn't make sense. And so like, it was just that's like, correct. Hey, I know you can get me there, but I don't have enough money to buy a Maybach. So like, hey, I know it's a great car, but I can't get it. So I think that's one thing where, to your point, the evolution of technology has just been on this huge trajectory where the economics start to become less prohibitive. And again, the democratization, like the arm the rebels kind of shit. The other thing is, I love the sophistication of the supply chain stuff, but like that doesn't really matter until you're big. Like it quasi matters, but it does. And that's what we were saying. I think it's the hardest thing to do to go from 20 to 100, because mistakes start to really matter. Like, especially if you only have you're incredible at ads, dude. Like the death blow is when you mismatch demand and supply. And it's like, dude, I just sold out of our hero product, or I sold out of 2 of our hero. Like most brands have like the Pareto principle, right? Like 80% of their money is made on 3 to 5 products usually. Like they have their core products. There's nice ancillary stuff, but those are more beers at the game. They're not the actual game. If you run out of those, if you think of it like a basketball analogy, if your top 2 or 3 players are out of the basketball game, like, what am I supposed to do here? You know what I mean? Like I can't run ads against this stuff because people don't want this. They want the other thing. So I think the supplies matter, but the mistakes hurt more as you're bigger. And so that's where I think it's really hard, because you can't just be this run and gun from 0 to 20. You can just basically send it. Versus 20 to 100, you're in this weird kind of middle space. You're not big enough to be command like a price setter or yell at your manufacturer saying like, hey, you need to make my stuff first. Like I've had buddies that have $70 million businesses that basically just get shortcutted because the manufacturer has one business that makes up 50% of the revenue. And they're like, hey, we took a bunch, it was in supplements, and like, hey, we took a bunch of your supplies that were allocated to you. Now it's going to be 2 more months instead of 30 days to get your stuff, because these people basically keep the lights on and you don't. And so you're in this really weird place where you really need to make sure your demand and supply match. And then to your other point, I love to see the sophistication. So I lucked out because I came from an economics background. So all the finance stuff was not foreign to me.
Pretty simple for you.
Dude, 5 years ago, man, I had friends doing, again, 10, 20, $30 million. They had no clue what gross profit was.
Yeah.
And like, there's never a problem till there's a problem. Right. And so when you're stuffing the money in the walls, who cares? Everything, so much is making it down to the net. It's like, I don't care what's going on. But then when when the water starts drying up and the faucet isn't a fire hose anymore, you're like, oh my gosh, like, why am I spending all this money on this random OpEx? And I have this incredible top line, but nothing makes it down to the bottom line. So I think that you guys, CTC, Taylor in specific, have done a really good job of getting some Drew Fallon over at Iris, have done a really good job of bringing into, like, I don't think people need to be CFOs, but you need to understand how to run a business or how you're impacting the business. Because again, like if your product doesn't have a paid media profile in terms of economics, like if this is a super low margin product, a sign of a horrible system is if it scales, it breaks. So if I'm selling the super low margin product at high velocity, like who cares? You're making no money, and you might be losing money because of the pick and pack and the shipping and handling. And like, okay, cool. I sold a $50 product. I spent $20 on acquisition. I spent $10 on pick and pack. And it's like, what are you doing? And I'm not saying those are bad products, but those aren't products that have the profiles to be used on paid. And so I completely agree. And honestly, I think it's good for the industry to get people into a little bit more financially literate and understand what impacts the business. Because at the end of the day, you want to make your clients win, or you want to make your brand win. And there's a saying in fitness where you can't out-train bad nutrition. You can't out-market bad economics. Those are the physics of your business, dude. And you just can't change those. And if you don't understand those, again, you can look at something that seems super successful, but you're like, you can't sell $20 bills for $10 in perpetuity. No.
The mistake people make there a lot of times, I think, is that they sort of have this idea that their P&L like was handed down from on high, and like those elements of it, they sort of the response to that was like, well, yeah, but like that's what my margin is, and like I can't. Maybe I agree with you, Rabah, but what can I do about that, right?
And that's like, a business problem. That's not a marketing problem. That's not a product problem. That's a business model problem. And horses for courses, man. Like you're like, dude, you either got to change this, or I can keep lighting $100 bills on fire for you on Facebook and show you all this funny money at the top. But like, if you want real business impact, and
you have to decide at some point.
It's a hard conversation. You're calling the baby ugly.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's funny. In fact, I can think of a specific situation where that was exactly it. Like we could not overcome the unit economics. We talked about all kinds of different things and trying to fix things. And the founder of the business, who I was talking with, reacted to it like I called his baby ugly. That was definitely the response, right? He couldn't, he had so much sweat equity in it that he just couldn't get distance enough to go like, the model doesn't work, And probably today I would be able to handle that conversation differently. I think this is a few years ago now, but like, and that's exactly the point, though. Like at some point, you actually have to be willing to do that in your business to sort of make a more drastic change. And that might mean, firing a bunch of people because your OpEx is bloated, and that's something you really don't want to do. It might
really hard. It sucks.
It's also hard to admit. Or like cutting a bunch of ad spend that like you don't have a great way of measuring, but like it's a really big like slice of humble pie to be like, oh, I've been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars in these places that are not getting a return. And I really thought I needed those, or, whatever, there are these things that people get sort of attached to in their businesses that is, just makes it really, really tough. Now, some of that I don't mind too much. Like if that's how you want to run your business and that's where you feel like there's joy in life, then fine. But like, but if you want to sort of actually protect your bottom line and grow the business, then there's points at which you have to make these really drastic and radical decisions. And the decision actually might be, I got to shut down my business. This actually is never going to work. And the longer I spend, I've done a terrible job of opportunity selection. The longer I spend time on this is the less time I can spend on something that's a better opportunity.
I like to win, man. Don't play games you can't win. And I've had the same, I don't want to say conflict, that's too loaded of a word, but the same discussions with brand owners as well. And I just hit them with a line. I'm like, do you want to be right or you want to make money? If you want to be right, that's totally cool, man. It's your business. This is your founder. This is your baby. I will deploy the capital in whatever way you want me to deploy it. But if you start telling me what to do, then why are you paying me $10,000, $20,000 a month to run your business? Like, then why are you even paying me if you know what I mean? Like, it's fine. I'll deploy. It's your money. I will spend it in the way that you want. But then why do you need me if I'm telling you, hey man, this is not the path forward. This you're just racing to a red light. And, and again, it's total personal preference, and good on them. They took a shot and they started a business, and it is what it is. But I think at the end of the day, man, I try and, like, people are all on their own journey, and I never find it useful to judge people. And it's just like, hey man, I'm here to help and support you, and if that diverges, it is what it is. I wish you the best. Hit me up if you ever need help again, and off to the races. Because it's just, don't get me wrong, I had to shovel shit for a really long time and just smile and nod and just be like, yes. But like, that's the point of, like I was trying to say, learn in your 20s, earn in your 30s, because it's okay to do that when you're young. But when you get older, man, it sucks to get talked down to by somebody that's dumber than you and all this stuff. So if there's anything you kiddos take away from this, like, really invest in yourself, be a good human, and try and make the day better for people. But I will say the one caveat to that is I have a pet peeve of toxic optimism. When stuff isn't going well, man, you got to address it. It's okay.
Well, this is the thing. Your comments about, like, I don't want to judge people, but like, sometimes this is actually, I mean, the gift of, there's the gift of clear and honest analysis or feedback or whatever for somebody, even if it's unflattering. It's like, it's one of the most precious things that you can give somebody, as long as you have the relational context for that to make sense, right? So
I call it political capital, but yeah,
exactly.
That's very wary of where you spend your political capital. But this is so perfect because I used to be an athlete, so sports is always top of mind for me. And the number one thing, like, you wanted the coach to yell at you, because if the coach is yelling at you, he still believes, or she still believes in you. You still have the ability. Yeah. When the coach stops yelling at you, that's when you're in trouble, because they've given up on you. And so I think that's when you get yes men and women around you or whatever, you need to have, I'm not a decision by committee guy. There needs to be a man, woman at the top saying, this, we're the captain, this is where we go. But that person needs to synthesize information from all their lieutenants and figure out what the best path forward is. And, at the end of the day, dude, we're all making bets and stuff like that. But it's easier said than done, because I will say one way to communicate with people, I think people experience the world in stories. If you can wrap the data in stories, that's much more meaningful. Like, data won't change people's minds, but a story wrapped in data will. And so that's something that is, Steve Jobs said, the most powerful people on the planet are the storytellers. And so the better you can be, the more astute you can become at storytelling, and the more you can understand. There's a great book, kind of a little hippy dippy, but I have a 200-pound amethyst crystal in my house. So I'm big capitalist, but also hippy dippy. There's a great book called The Alchemist, and you need to understand what your boss's question is, or what your client's question is. What are they trying to answer? What is that? And I just have a thesis that unless you're the founder or owner, the only thing you care about is making your boss happy. And so figuring out ways to make your boss happy. And again, it stinks if it's the wrong decision, but at the end of the day, if you aren't the owner or the founder, you're making recommendations, not decisions. And then if you don't like that, then either go somewhere else or start your own thing.
Yep. All right, we got like just a few minutes left. Give people the 2-minute Fermat pitch, and while you do it, answer their biggest objection about it.
Oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot. So the biggest pitch is, instead of thinking of an ad or an acquisition, in that basically we just need to get them to the ad and then to the house, you can build different pathways. So again, that hub and spoke model where you can have one product, but it can jobs to be done, whatever. And what we do is we give you essentially these Fermat primitives, or we call them Fermat functions. And so I think of the funnel in 5 places. You have the content, the thing that gets the click, essentially. And then you have the post-click experience. Then you have the cart, or the PDP, and then you have the cart. We give you access to the 3 most important things, aside from the thing that's generating the click. But most people don't really need help with that. It's the lander, the PDP, and then the cart. And so being able to test offers, free shipping thresholds, different PDPs, where I might want to show a PDP with a woman, I might want to show a PDP with a man, I might want to show a PDP with a product and be able to test. And so we're just really big proponents of growth through experimentation. Once you start to hit kind of terminal velocity, in aeronautics,
Yeah.
they kept blowing up planes. So propeller planes, basically what happens at 500 miles an hour, they basically make what happens with the sonic boom. They just make this huge air wall that just destroys the plane. And so when you're ready to go from a propeller plane to a jet, this is how that's my thesis. This is how all the best people are going to start marketing is building jets instead of trying to make a faster propeller plane, because it's just going to blow up.
Yep. Love it. All right. I'm a fan. I have told people a lot of times before, I don't take these kinds of sponsorship partnerships without having it be something that I actually use and believe in. I think the way you just framed up the value of Fermat is exactly the value that we've seen with it, and exactly the value I expect to see with it for future clients as well, and why I'm pretty happy to be doing it and having the conversation. So, Rabah, thanks, man. Appreciate your time. And where should people follow up with you?
You can go fermatcommerce.com, go book a demo, go make my boss happy. I'm also /AF. You see this guy? I love him.
Make sure it comes through me so that people know that you found him through this.
Let's get it done. What else we got? We got an incredible newsletter that goes out called The Geometry of Growth, curated by the indomitable Alexa Kilroy, our director of marketing. You can sign up right on the site. What a team
you have there. You've got you, Alexa, and Aaron Orendorf.
This 92 Barcelona, baby. We're doing, people get that if they're a basketball thing. But yeah, man, hit me up on the Twitters. Usually pretty active on Twitter. LinkedIn, I try, but it eats at my soul. And then, but I love connecting with people, and people have been so gracious early on in my career. So if I can make a lot of impact with people, but also it doesn't cost me a lot, I'm always up for that. So hit me up there. And then it's criminal. This is the first time we've met, so I'm gonna do the shameless thing, and you need to come on my pod, and we can jam even more.
Send me an invite.
Done. But this is really awesome, Andrew. Big fan of yours. I think the way you think about the market and the way you treat people is really meaningful. And I think that a lot of people do the first thing right, and then as you get older, you realize, man, you can always make more money, but being a good human and just trying to make make somebody smile today, make a good impact on the world. I know it sounds super hippy dippy coming from a capitalist, but man, it's so meaningful to really leave the world better than you found it. So hopefully your product or your service or whatever you guys are doing out there can do that.
Thanks, Rabah. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, brother.
Peace.